Miles came with the warning, but it was ignored. Talked about a bioweapon like a silent war. Now we know COVID was the code that they rolled to rig the vote. We went woke, now we going broke. They knew the facts and the figures and the dirty money, but then the feds got triggered, now the water's muddy. The CCP are deputized like the FBI. I wonder if they smoke the power cause they're getting high. We know that she's making a deal with Biden to extradite Miles in exchange for some spies. Now they use controlled opposition, China going after dissidents. We're building this resistance, hope you're listening. Feels like we're on the edge of time, but keep our head on. They can't erase 7 days. Why they come for your freedom when you stand up, or surrender your soul with your hands up? The 60 people feel the swords of crusaders. We taste blood of these government gangsters. Fight fire with some fire, we ain't hiding. Got no fear, only feel the almighty. 3 miles walk to these puppet dictators. Pull a drop by on these government gangsters.
I think we might have cracked the code, how this game is sold. But sadly seldom told, some of y'all just are in bold. Ain't got no heart but mostly cold. Opposition all controlled by elites all rich and old. While CCP deceives the globe. It's time we wake up and dig into what we're heading for. If they don't 3 miles woke, then we'll be overthrown. Xi Jinping will claim the throne. Planes get flown, balloons and drones. And USA's the battle zone. And once we're words, now sticks and stones. Though I won't run away, I must not hold the truth today. This road was built through paper plate. Members of the DOJ, government gangsters, whoa, they're in bed with all our foes. But there's one man who knows. 3 miles woke.
Feels like we're on the edge of time, but keep our head on. They can't erase 7 days. Why they come for your freedom when you stand up, or surrender your soul with your hands up? The 60 people feel the swords of crusaders. We taste blood of these government gangsters. Fight fire with some fire, we ain't hiding. Got no fear, only feel the almighty. 3 miles walk to these puppet dictators. Pull a drop by on these government gangsters. Yeah. Pull a drop by on these government gangsters.
Hello everyone, welcome to our new episode for Infiltration Files. I'm your host Roy, and
DVS 7.0.
okay, so it's been a while. Last week we did a show, a fantastic show with Ava on LFA. We did a 2-hour show. Also we live streamed on Gather. And before that, we experienced like the 3rd anniversary event. But today, like I think I want to talk about like a debate happened before, actually on May 30th, the bail appeal debate from the Second Circuit Court. But today, like we got another news, like actually it's a bad news. Miles' bail appeal got denied by the Second Circuit Court. So I've seen the document. It just got released a couple hours ago, but I didn't really get the full information because on the document it's pretty. It's just 1-page document said they denied. It didn't say the votes. It didn't say the reasons. It didn't say much of the information. But we still gonna link that to the debate happened like 2 weeks ago, because the 3 judges actually asked really good questions where the associate attorney from the government, Ryan Finkel, didn't really answer that properly. But still, like we got the result, which makes me feel like it's almost like irrelevant from the debate. I think our like Miles' attorney did a really good job. Ryan Finkel from the government did a really bad job. He's basically just repeating himself and mentioning like something or the government already stated before, and he couldn't really answer the question, especially the question like later in the audio recording that Judge I think his name is Judge Ron Newman. He's a really a senior circuit judge, 93 years old, very experienced. He asked a really good question. Later, we're gonna go through the audio recording with everyone and with Sean. We'll comment on it. And but before that, I want to hear your comment. Also, like we saw this beautiful music video just released yesterday, Gavin McGanster from DVS 7.0 and Kill Will. That actually lots of scenes like I've seen here before. Actually, it's in the home base of New Fighter State of China, and it's a really good video put together. Gandalf actually shot part of the video, and you shot part of the video. So, do you want to mention a little bit about that?
Yeah, it was a fun little project. We recorded the first few pieces here, and then we got another separate camera clips from Will on his side, and it took a while to piece them all together, right? And so we got some more. Will happened to come over here for the anniversary, and I was like, wait, we can really make this more consistent, and since we're here together now, and let's get some more clips here. And so the video got put together pretty well. It's a pretty good video. The concept and the song and the things that we're talking about are pretty. It's a pretty cool song and a pretty cool genre, a cool style of song. I love being a part of it. Just because I don't have many songs that are, in this genre and in this style, and it was fun just doing it and being a part of it. And Kill Will always delivers; he's always bringing really, really, great stuff. So it was fun working with him.
And Miles Guo Gang. I mean, like now we have so many artists, fantastic artists working together. And also, I encourage you guys to continue to scan the QR code on the screen and download and support and share the Free Miles Guo movement. Album. I think the momentum is really strong, although it's been released for at least 2 weeks from now. I think it released on June 1st, and yesterday when I checked the chart, it's still like number 5 or number 6 on the US, and I believe like number 1 for many different regions.
Right.
So the momentum is strong, and I think that you're gonna release more music videos. I think that totally they're gonna be 8 or 9 music videos altogether.
Right.
So I encourage like whoever has not downloaded, has not shared, like please go to iTunes and share and support. This is a unique way to support the Free Miles Guo movement and the whistleblower movement and New Fighter State of China. So I want to hear a little bit about your opinion on the decision we just got, like the bail appeal got denied for Miles, and also I want you to comment a little bit, and then we will go through we'll go to Nick's Getter page. He live streamed the whole process. I think it's 25 minutes debate on May 30th, and also there like a transcription like on top of the video, which is really good. So we're gonna go through that. But first, I want to hear about your opinion.
Well, yeah, I mean, Miles we just found out maybe 30-40 minutes ago that Miles was denied bail. Our show today was to go over some of what we heard on the bail request. And on the bail request, you kind of hear, like he was saying, there's just a lot of back and forth, repetitive arguments from Ryan, the opposing attorney. And the arguments are just really just don't stand well. They don't really add up. They don't make sense. And a lot of really good questions were asked from John Newman and other people. And they didn't arrive to something solid. So today we actually did expect that we were going to hear good news, because the arguments were just, counterproductive to the other side. They just didn't work out, didn't make sense, didn't add up. And it's a shame that even still, with the arguments being so obvious and so clear, that we still have no justice. And so I think we'll hear a little more to kind of give you an idea of how ridiculous it really is. Like we always do in our show, we show the receipts. We're not just talking. You're going to hear the actual audio yourself. You're going to hear the arguments, and you're going to be able to ask the same questions that we do. I mean, how does it make sense? How does it add up? Why is Miles denied bail again today?
Mm-hmm. So I want to talk to our audience first before we play the clip. Actually, in the clip, Miles has a different name called Ho Wen Kwok. Actually, that's the name they use always in all the documents and in all in the legal cases. This is his, like when you hear Kwok, that's Miles. That's Miles Kwok or Miles Kwok. And also, like, there are different people talking. At the very beginning, that's Miles. Later, you hear like at the very beginning, that's Miles' lawyer, and then the people who's asking questions. Actually, there are three judges: Sarah Merriam, Ernest Lee, and John Newman. So those are the three judges, and also Ryan Finkel. Ryan Finkel is the representative, is the assistant attorney from the government, defending the government. And so let's play the clip, and I will stop at the proper location, and we will comment along the clip. So let's put it out from the beginning.
And subjected to an unprecedented level of attack from the only other global superpower, state-sponsored electronic hacking, surveillance, disruption of his activities,
So this is
physical
now
surveillance
Miles'
here in the United States, harassment by foreign operatives who come to his home and threatened him unless he returns to China. The high-level penetration of our government, even within the Department of Justice, where people were acting as unregistered foreign agents in order to secure our clients' deportation to China. Personal threats and attacks, a red notice based on trumped-up charges, a state-sponsored global disinformation campaign designed to discredit, besmirch, bankrupt, innumerable lawsuits filed against our client by CCP, Chinese Communist Party agents, and a documented effort to urge the CCP agents in the United States to call on U.S. law enforcement to take prompt action against Mr. Kwok. That comes from an FBI affidavit filed in the Eastern District of New York.
And how does that, though, weigh into the calculation of whether or not, the factors that relate to whether or not someone's a risk either of flight or of harm to the community or obstruction, like these issues that you've just mentioned, how do they, those factors suggest that the district court was wrong in making these findings?
Any of that. And the reason why the court should have considered that is because all of these factors go to whether or not he is a flight risk, and in particular, a flight risk abroad, which has been the focus of the government's allegations.
So is your argument that at the threshold question of 3142 is it F2, that of even triggering the possibility of a detention hearing is where the flaw is, and or in the consideration of the factors, right? Because in order to, given the nature of the charges, in order to even consider detention, the court has to find either a serious risk of flight or a serious risk, essentially, of obstruction or tampering. Is your argument that at that threshold question of whether detention could even be considered, the court erred, or that the balancing of the factors was an error, or both?
The balancing of the factors primarily, both, Your Honor. But my focus today is on the latter.
Okay.
And the reason for that is each of these factors, each of these elements, the personal circumstances of the defendant compel him to remain in the United States. Were he to leave, were he to subject himself to either extradition from the UAE, as the government has suggested he would abscond to, or anywhere else, he would leave the umbrella of protection, limited umbrella of protection that the U.S. has provided, abandon his asylum claim, and abandon his wife and his daughter who reside here, and also abandon his son who lives in the U.K. because he couldn't go there. They have an extradition relationship with the United States. But these factors were never considered, at least they don't appear to have been considered by the district court.
Well, the district court, though, did consider the family issue, the fact of his wife and daughter being here, and in fact noted that his son is in England, and so that was considered by the district court.
Yes, but not in the context of the threats he faces from China and why that would compel him to stay here, where his wife and his daughter are also asylee applicants. So that nuance is missing from the district court's opinion. 3142E requires that the judicial officer find no condition or combination of conditions will assure the person's appearance in court. The district court did not conduct that assessment. At least it's not clear that it did in the order. Instead, the district court examined only our bail proposal. And of that, only a portion of it. And the portion that it did consider, it dismissed without any substantive analysis at all, or very little. The court stated, the district court, that no condition or set of conditions would ensure the defendant's return to court or the safety of the community. Parroting that language is not enough. Instead of explaining why or how that is the case, the court follows that sentence with defendant's bail package is insufficient. And it's insufficient because we hadn't proposed our sureties yet. And the court speculated that we couldn't come up with any sureties that would satisfy the requirements that in our proposal, that they be vetted by the government and that they meet the court and the government's approval. We were never even given that opportunity, but the court concluded we couldn't do that. And the fact that we hadn't yet presented them should be a basis to deny bail.
But wasn't the district court more focused on just the general issue of the extraordinary resources and connections, and that's part of, seemed to be a big part of what the district court was relying on? That combined with the evidence suggesting obstructive behavior even after he was under investigation.
Yes, Your Honor, I'm going to, Judge Lee, I'm going to talk about that right now. The court found that past behavior of the defendant troubling, and these obstruction orders from the bankruptcy court troubling. There's no question about that. The problem here is that we fashioned a bail proposal that did not require Mr. Kwok's willingness to abide by court orders. And the government said in its papers, all the conditions we proposed require his willingness. That's not true. We took into account that concern. We proposed GPS monitoring combined with home detention, combined with severe electronic restrictions such that he could have no communication with anyone but his lawyers, and 24/7 surveillance by guards.
But those guards, would they be empowered? I mean, I've probably
point of the whole debate, that is, the focus is, first, Miles' lawyer says he is the CCP victim number one. And he experienced for the last, we know it's for the last 6 years or more, that their documented evidence shows that he's been harassed, he's being attacked, he's being like in all those combined effort, like we talk about, like, you know, Pras Michel, Sun Lijun, right, all the MSP, like all the, you know, the police officers, like the in disguise, like in New York, in all over the U.S., and 1/3 of the effort, according to Stanford report, in 2020, 1/3 of the effort, like in Twitter, like the Twitter trolls or Twitter like bots are targeting Miles Guo, and wow. he's like 1/3, like 30%, at least 30% of the effort, like of the target. But here, like, the judge asked another question, like says, okay, are you talking about like this like the Judge Torres, like which the other judge like made the decision of the denial, saying that is it like you want to talk about like it's the threshold question, like is this it's not questionable at all, like that there should not be a detention before trial, like or like you say like Judge Torres erred because the balance of the question, the balance of the factors. And then Miles' judge said both, but actually I want to talk about the balance of factors more. That's going to be the focus of his today. And then later he goes on, like he said, it's if like the Judge Torres says, oh, like if Miles to leave, he's gonna leave his family, and he's gonna lose the protection umbrella of a protection of USA, and he quotes like twice or three times of the code 3142. And actually, we know 3142 is the release or detention of a defendant pending trial. That's kind of the principles, like lots of principles we know, and Miles' lawyer saying like the government didn't really consider enough of the danger of like as a CCP enemy number one, victim number one, the danger itself, like if he were to flee or he were to do anything or not, like to basically just breach or disobey the conditions they proposed, and later you see the conditions are very severe. 24/7 surveillance, GPS monitor, bracelets, and like basically like home detention, almost the same as he's staying in MDC, but without actual punishment, like put him in cell and let him suffer.
I think the first place to start is just at the bare minimum. One, as we always say, we have criminals, actual murderers being released out on bail. I mean, the worst that there is, being released out on bail next day after they commit their crime, immediately being released out on bail. Now, Miles' lawyer makes an entire full-blown case on how he's not a danger. The danger is actually more so to him that he would, take flight or, do all these other things. And Miles' lawyer makes this case. One, he has documented in other cases by the FBI that he's the target of a massive campaign by the CCP to just malign his name, to harass him, harass his family. He has a wife and daughter. I mean, there's just so many things that just don't add up. For him to break any of these restrictions on bail, to be released out on bail, any of these restrictions is basically suicide. They already have. He has. He's being targeted by even members in the DOJ itself. That are working for the CCP, but none of it compares so much so to anywhere else. Right now, he's under the umbrella of protection of the United States, and this is the most protected place he's in. But none of this really matters because at the base of it, one, everyone else is being let out on bail. The most wildest criminals that there are being released out on bail. Sam Bankman-Fried and actual murderers are being released out on bail next day. Miles has no victims, has no case against him. The opposing counsel is not making a good case for why Miles would be even called a danger. I don't know if we got to that part in the audio where he says, he's a danger to the community. And then when, I think Judge John Newman asks, well, what do you mean by danger? You mean violent? He's like, no, he's dangerous because he's going to commit fraud again. It's like, none of this adds up. Like, they're using these choice words, and a lot of it is just, really emotional terms, and they'll speak in a tone just to kind of get you fired up and feeling like there's some big commotion going on here. There's a big threat, but it's not really anything there. There's no meat.
So this is a first point of debate, right? While Miles, considering that he's the CCP victim number one or enemy number one or the biggest, victim, being targeted all the time, is that how did Judge Torres erred? Is it a threshold question? If the question should not be even considered, he should never be considered to be denied for bail, or Judge Torres erred in terms of considering different factors. Mm-hmm. For example, one big factor is that if he were to leave, he'll be like you said, it's like a suicide. It's committed suicide. So this is not a reasonable factor, or it's not considered enough to prove, to support that Miles would never, break the restrictions of the bail. So that's the number one point that they start to talk about. And then next, I want to move to 545, 55, or something, or somewhere around that, or we can just continue if it's almost close. I want to listen to the bail package and also the fall. They also talk about the timing of trial. Miles' lawyers propose it should be no later than the fall, which is pretty quick actually. It's just a couple of months. But the government proposed next spring. But remember, this is the time when this is the time before the other hearing happened in June 6th, where actually it is decided already that the trial is going to be next spring. Actually, it's April 8th, 2024. So, but they talk a little bit about that, so we want to listen to that part as well. And then we're going to listen to, I think Ryan Franco is just after that.
On some different table in the room, I don't know, thousands of bail hearings. And at the end of the day, it is impossible to have a release on bail that doesn't rely on a defendant's compliance, because by definition, when you are not detained, at some level the defendant has freedom. So even in no matter how high the level of private security, unless those private security officers are somehow authorized by the government to use force to detain him, which I don't anticipate was going to be the case, or that bracelet is the first I've ever seen that wasn't capable of being cut off. At the end of the day, there is still the requirement that the defendant willingly comply. The only measure that stops that is physical restraint. So I don't understand how you can say that these conditions did not require any voluntary compliance by Mr. Kwok.
Well, we started with our bail package under the premise that he would comply with those conditions for various reasons, such as the threat he faces if he were to flee. The other requirements, GPS, home detention, as the court recognized with regard to guards, it's not the same as a federal detention facility. Of course not. But these combined together, along with the other requirements and the sureties, are sufficient. And in case such as a Subhani case, where you had a very similarly situated defendants with extensive ties abroad, tens of millions of dollars of money abroad, the ability to flee, family members overseas, and very little connection to the U.S., the court found that that was an extreme case, but that the proposal, which mirrors closely what we're proposing, was extreme as well and was adequate to address those issues. So no, it's not a perfect solution, and detention would be as close to perfection as you can get, but that's not what's required, is perfection.
No, I was picking up on your claim that the court improperly relied on this idea that voluntary compliance by the defendant was relevant. That you made a comment that there was no need for voluntary or willing compliance, and that's what I was responding to.
And I'm sorry if I overstated, Judge Miriam. My point is that we considered both his compliance, willingness to comply with some of our package, and the fact that there's concerns that he won't, and this is a supplementary conditions such as guards, et cetera. None of that was adequately distressed by the district court as to why that would not be sufficient.
And given the need for supplemental information, it sounds like you're saying, look, the district court didn't give us a chance to fully flesh out our proposal here in terms of identifying the sureties and things like that. It's not uncommon that we see postponements of bail hearings or repeated resubmissions of proposals and packages. Isn't that still available to you and your client?
Well, that doesn't appear to be available based on the language of the order where the court said not only did we not propose sureties, but it could not imagine any circumstance in which—
Well, but it doesn't have to imagine if you give them to the court.
Well, that's true, Your Honor, but the language of the order seemed dispositive and necessary to seek this court's relief and asking the district court to reconsider that sort of absolute bar to us finding any surety that would meet those requirements.
Has a trial date been set?
No, Your Honor. We have a status conference next week.
Date? Have you asked for an early date?
We asked for trial this fall, which is exceptionally soon given the volume of evidence. The government has asked for trial next spring, 2024.
May it please the court. My name is Ryan Finkel for the United States. I'm an assistant United States attorney in the Southern District of New York, and I represent the United States in this appeal, as I did in the district court below. Judge Torres did not err, let alone clearly err, when determining that Kwok presents a serious risk of flight, a serious risk of obstruction, and a danger to the community. Nor is there error in Judge Torres' conclusion that there are no set of conditions which should ensure the safety of the community. Kwok claims that the court did not take into consideration sort of speculative and theoretical possibilities and restrictions on bail. That's not right. Judge Torres did. And what Judge Torres did do was look at Kwok's actions, Kwok's activities in other litigations, including decisions published by a state Supreme Court judge in New York State, Judge Ostreicher, and a federal bankruptcy court judge, Judge Manning. And
Did the court, I'm sorry, just to jump in for a second. Did the court consider the issue of the fact that there was no flight for, I guess, some period of time, a year perhaps, after he knew he was under investigation, that during that time he remained in the United States? Was that considered by the court, so far as you can tell?
It was, Your Honor. In fact, Judge Torres said, and this is, I believe, page 7.
First time. Actually, later we hear another same question from different judge. Here, judge, I think is Sarah Merriam, asked, did Miles knew, or when Miles knew that he was investigated under this charge, did he flee,
Right.
or did he move? Or this is the pre-question. She asked okay, did he knew when?
Well, she's asking, did the court consider?
Yeah,
did the court consider in their request for bail or in their response to bail, whether he'd get a bail or not, did they consider the fact that he knew he was under investigation prior to being detained and arrested and did not flee? So this is a huge point. This is a really good point.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just 1,000 reasons why he can't flee, and then on top of that, when he knew, he still didn't flee.
Yeah, and probably that the very reason is what Miles' lawyer is talking about, that it's too dangerous for him to flee, or it's too dangerous for him to really do anything but stay under the umbrella of protection in USA.
Right.
So that's the comment I want to make. Actually,
Limited protection is what he said, because it's still limited even here,
Yes,
but not so much as out anywhere else.
Right, and now he's in federal prison.
Right.
Okay, so let's continue to play. Continue to play the clip, and then we'll comment on the later part.
The defendant engaged in extensive international travel after leaving China in 2015, prior to filing his application for asylum in the United States. And Judge Torres concluded that when he remained in the United States, her words, it is more likely than not that the pendency of defendant's asylum application prevented him from traveling internationally between 2017 and the present, rather than his fear of persecution.
Right, no, I'm not speaking so much to persecution. I'm talking about flight in terms of avoiding these charges from the time that he knew he was under investigation, and I don't know what the year was when that became known, that there was no attempt at that point, when there was a threat of criminal action, there was no attempt to leave the United States.
Judge Torres definitely considered those arguments, because those arguments were featured by counsel at the oral argument before Judge Torres and in their papers. So those arguments were certainly considered by Judge Torres. And what Judge Torres considered is, among other things, but to the extent those facts suggest that Kwok wasn't going to flee the United States, the government obviously has a different view, but just taking that arguendo, it also shows how much of a danger Kwok was, because he was essentially undeterrable. And this
is the finishing point of the first of the discussion about the flight risk, right? Like arguments, and then he just jumped to the danger part, and then which leads to a more.
What in that discussion all of a sudden says, which is the reason why it clearly shows, whatever his word was, that he's a danger.
No, but yeah, later we can talk about the danger. But now, the first part is about. Remember, there are only two major points the government is trying to blame Miles in order to giving the denial of bail. First is the flight risk. The government is constantly saying, okay, Miles is to flee. Because he's resourceful, because he did whatever, he used to go to different countries in 2015. Actually, he mentioned that. And then the second part is the danger of the community. But now, the first part, the 2-minute clip we just listened to, is about the flight risk. And in the flight risk, remember, Judge Merriam asked him, did the government consider, or did Miles knew, and then he didn't flee. And then Ryan said, yes, Judge Torres consider that, or whatever. And then he started to give the example of, in 2015, he traveled. Of course, we know he traveled. He basically fled from communist China. Of course, he traveled to, we know, Hong Kong, and then to UK, and then finally to United States. But remember, that's 8 years ago. And Judge Merriam right away asked him, no, I'm not talking about that. I'm not going to talk about the persecution or the possibility of persecution when he traveled after 2015. I'm asking you when he knew he was under investigation, and then like he flee, and also Judge Torres, if Judge Torres consider that. So, and then of course Judge Marion, it seems like she didn't really know the date, but like we know, like Miles could know like as early as last year October until now, like it's over half a year, and Miles didn't flee. And he did actually something on the opposite. He said it in the broadcast many times that he's ready for the investigations. He's ready for, like he showed his sweaters and whatever. He talked in front of camera. He said, "I'm ready for arrest, or I'm ready for whatever coming to me because of the infiltration of DOJ and the government." That's what he did.
He literally had jail clothes ready that he would wear in case of the day that he'd be taken into custody.
Yeah, that's how determined he is, and that's how straightforward and frank he is. He just show what he's thinking about, show his like preparation, and tell the world that I'm ready. I'm not going anywhere. Just come arrest me. And what Ryan was saying, Ryan saying, Torres considered that, and he didn't really quote any evidence supporting his claim, showing that like George Torres actually considered that, and then he straight jumped into the next point.
Dangerous.
He's dangerous. Okay, let's. Do you want to say something more, or we can just continue to play?
Well, you can go ahead. Yeah.
All right, let's continue to look at the danger part.
These conclusions that Judge Torres reached.
Danger to do what?
To continue the fraud.
Can he do that from jail just as well?
Well, Your Honor, I respectfully submit that if Kwok can continue to commit the fraud while in jail, then the proper place for him is to be detained, because he certainly could commit the fraud when he is released. And there is no doubt, Your Honor, I submit, that being detained in a federal system would
but danger usually means he'll assault somebody. I don't know that we've ever approved detention because he will defraud somebody. Have we?
So this court has, Your Honor, looked at economic harm, and I would submit to the court, and Judge Torres considered both of these things, that danger arises from Kwok in two ways. One is that despite his knowledge that the SEC had issued an order essentially barring him from certain investment activities, he continued to do it. Despite the fact that the government had seized some of his financing, he continued to defraud. In fact, Your Honor,
I'm not disputing, I'm not raising with you the issue of whether he will defraud, only whether that's a good reason to lock him up.
So, Your Honor, this court has considered economic harm, possible economic harm, as a danger. And beyond the possible economic harm, Your Honor, there's also the harm of obstruction. And that is significant here, because unlike, I would submit, typical cases or many cases, and Judge Torres considered this, as I mentioned, other judges have found his obstructive behavior and issued opinions about that obstructive behavior. Okay. And just to give an example, Your Honor, Judge Manning, the federal bankruptcy court judge, on November 23rd, 2022, issued a TRO enjoining Kwok from essentially harassing, including protesting outside. Some of the protests became quite physical outside Paul Hastings' offices, and O'Melveny and Meyer involved in civil litigation against Kwok, and enjoined him from this behavior. Days later, Kwok issued a statement in a broadcast when talking about the court-appointed bankruptcy trustee to deal with this rogue, meaning the trustee, and I'm quoting.
Protest, like Miles didn't really say anything about the protest. Actually, the protest is from the supporters or investors of GTV against SEC or whatever, and also like they go there voluntarily, right? Right. The protesters. So, but of course, the government tried to link Miles and those protesters or those actions or protests together, just like how they link the property that Miles doesn't own to his own case, to his own bankruptcy case, to his own fraud case or whatever, like Lady May and also Sheraton Netherlands Hotel, whatever, like even like his son and his daughter owns. They just claim, oh, this is all your property because you're using it. That's why like it's yours. So, but what I want to talk about is earlier, like when Judge Joe John Newman asked a question like, what danger to what? Like what you said it's a danger to community, but what's your definition of danger? Danger usually means you're gonna harm someone.
You know, just because this style for me is so familiar. It rings so many bells. It smells of the same lingo and work of so many different things that I've seen. And it's overcompensation. It's like emphatic speech. The reason why they got to use words like a danger to the community, dangerous, in regards to fraud and not actual physical violence, the reason why they got to do that is for overcompensation. There's something that's missing. There's a lack of what they have, and so they got to be emphatic about in everything they say. And this, you see that in his terms of obstructive behavior. These are replacement words that make it more than what it is. And the reason why he's calling these particular obstruction is because they're afraid of Miles. The obstruction they're talking about is Miles showing more stuff, revealing more things, and finding more, having more documents to reveal. And they label these things, big words like dangerous and obstructive, and try to change the terminology. And it seems like the judge keeps catching it a little bit, and it's like, but wait, I'm not sure we've ever approved a fraud as something that's dangerous to the community.
So that you detain the person, right? So I think he asked a really good question, John Newman. Judge John Newman, he's actually the senior circuit judge. He's so experienced. He's so logical, right? Two things. First, when Ryan said, "Oh, he's a danger to the community," and then right away, the judge asked, "Okay, so have we ever approved detention in this condition?" So this is unprecedented. If there's never a case that like proof denial of bail because you think it's a danger to the community because he's gonna fraud someone, potentially fraud someone, continue to fraud.
Right, and he tried to throw in a few things there and glaze over it in a way. This court has considered and had opinions of economic.
No, remember, that's the second point I want to talk about. When Ryan said, "Okay, we consider that." Because look, SEC ordered something to bar him to continue to fraud, and then he continued to fraud. And then remember what the judge said to ask him? Like the judge said, we're not talking about the case itself. We're not talking about if he actually committed the fraud. Because Ryan is citing something is not proved yet.
Right.
The case, the whole trial, the whole case is about the fraud, if he frauded or not. And then Ryan said, "Oh, because SEC issued something, he needs to stop to fraud." But who said it's a fraud?
Right.
That's why we're having this whole case.
Right.
Right. And then, the judge asked, Judge John Newman just asked, "Okay, I'm not just saying, I'm not talking about if it's a fraud case or not. I'm just saying is there any case, have we ever experienced a case like this that because you think it's a danger to the community because he continued to fraud, and then we just deny his bail?"
Right.
And has Judge Torres considered that? Has Judge Torres think through this whole thing? And then
They've had opinions.
Yeah,
That's what he
yes, that's the
responded.
opinion. And then Ryan Frankel continued to say, "Oh, because they started to protest, and then Miles."
Right.
Just encourage those. Yeah.
Right, and this is the thing. You'll hear it in so many of different cases in the same language, in the same tone. They protest. Like they'll talk real angry and passionately about protest. I mean, is it wrong to protest? And what physical thing is he talking about exactly? So one, he's attacking the idea of protesting as if it's a problem, and he gets emotional as if that's the issue itself. He mentions the SEC and how he fraud this and that when there's a case because they're trying to figure out if there's actually a fraud. So basically, he's trying to paint Miles as guilty before proven. So guilty until proven innocent is Ryan's stance, his lingo, his language, and you know, just his entire direction here just seems like he's determined to. He already has a decision made in his mind before the decision is clear to anyone.
Because the logic here is so confusing. I don't understand why you could just something is unproven, and then you just use that as a reason,
Right.
like to
Right.
prove yourself.
Right.
So let's continue to play. I think we're gonna jump a little bit. We're gonna jump to 20 minute, 2050, somewhere around that, or maybe a little bit earlier than that. And I want to talk about like the last point about the bail package.
Government's proffer, which is appropriate, but Judge Torres's opinion itself cites underlying evidence, cites statements that Kwok himself made, not from the government's briefing, but on his social media pages. So did Judge Torres do what was required of a district court judge? Did she analyze the evidence before her and reach a conclusion that is plausible in the face of all the evidence? Absolutely, and this court should affirm.
All right, thank you.
Judge Torres was required to consider all possible alternatives to preventative detention and, quote, to explain on the record the extent to which it considered any alternatives, and if so, on what basis they were rejected. Judge Torres did not do that. Judge Torres did not even consider all of our proposals, much less all of the possible proposals that could potentially secure Mr.
But
Kwok's.
your package was before her.
It was before.
So are we to assume she didn't read it?
I don't know. I presume that she read it, Your Honor.
When you come up with a detailed package, does she have to take each item and say each one is not enough, nor in combination are they enough?
Yes, Your Honor.
She has to say that. She
absolutely.
can't look at your package and say, not enough.
Correct.
She can't do that. Have we made that clear on a detailed package?
To explain on the record the extent to which the court considered any alternatives, and if so, on what basis they...
alternatives. I can understand that if someone comes in and says, Judge, we want bail and we think a $10,000 bond is enough. And the judge doesn't say anything, just says deny.
Right.
That's a pretty thin record.
Correct.
But when you sort of, you meet yourself coming and going a little bit. I mean, I understand. I'm not faulting you, but I understand. You want to give her the best possible package to avoid detention. And with some judges, that might be persuasive. But when it isn't, can you then fault the judge for not saying, well, I've looked at your 7-point package, and it isn't enough?
Well, Judge Newman, the Barrios v. Barrios, this court's decision, says the judge must also state on the record on what basis they were rejected. And in this case, there was no statement on the record on what basis our proposals were rejected. And indeed, how is it that the concerns raised by the government are not satisfied by an absolute bar on all electronic communications, home detention, under supervision? That is extreme requirements necessary to match what they claim is an extreme risk, and we believe that was sufficient. And the court clearly erred in not even identifying why that was not sufficient clearly on the record. On that, I submit. Thank you, Your Honors.
All right, thank you. We'll take it under advisement. That concludes our matters for argument this morning. So I believe we're ready to adjourn.
So at the very end, because Miles' lawyer started to talk about, okay, Judge Torres didn't really explain enough about how insufficient our package is, right? Miles' lawyer submitted a 7-point package, like with all the, later he said, extreme conditions, right? Home surveillance, like we said, like home surveillance, no communications through any device, right? And bracelets, 24/7 guards or whatever. And what Judge Torres did was denial. No, this is not enough.
Right.
But Judge Newman said, like, when you say you deny this, when you say this is insufficient, you should explain more Like, what's more efficient? Like, for example, like if you say, oh, our surety is like $10,000, and then the judge said, no, it's not enough. You need to give 20, right? That's the example actually Judge Newman gave.
Right.
Like you need to give a counter condition, or you need to give an explanation why it is not enough. You cannot just say this is insufficient and done.
Right.
You got denied.
Right. This entire conversation is like absurd, and again, Miles was denied bail after this. This was the bail request, debate, and he was denied bail today. We found out 40 hour ago or so, and the whole conversation is absurd. And then to top it off, you get no answer. How are we giving you this extreme package of all these restrictions that Miles will have if he were to be released from the detention center and to just experience those same restrictions, but from home with guards and restricted from electronics and all of these things? Explain which part of this package the government doesn't agree with. Explain to us and give us the response on why you say denied. Okay, because the guards is not going to be enough, or because electronic he'll be able to surpass and do this with other stuff, or the reason why this package. None of that. You don't get none of that from these judges, and the entire conversation. You just hear the arguments and the changes of terminology where fraud is now danger and violent and physical, and it's just. The whole conversation is ridiculous. The outcomes are ridiculous. I think throughout so many of the episodes that we've gone through, and all the things we've talked about, I think it's really clear and obvious that there's an agenda, that there's a predetermined agenda to accomplish a task by all means necessary, no matter how much sense or no sense it makes, no matter how silly the arguments are. They must be confident in having some back alley or back way people who are going to protect these ridiculous arguments. And you see it, you have the different judges and you hear the different discussions, and it's you can see a debate between certain things that really just don't require a debate.
Yeah. Well, one thing I don't really understand is that, like, especially after we got the result, right? Now we know Miles got denied again. Although he got lots of options, of course, I want to give a little bit of confidence to our supporters and audiences that Miles can still appeal, right? Can still appeal. First, he can still appeal to the Supreme Court. That's going to take some while, but that's one option. Second, we know that the judge has already approved Miles' attorney to go into Sierra Netherlands to collect more evidence. We still don't know what happened that day. That day, I was there, like I was looking at the situation, like when media is in front of the in front of the apartment, and the firefighters are coming out and in the gate of Sierra Netherlands, and nobody's talking about nothing about the fire after like 5 hours after Miles' arrest. And when I actually talk to Fox 5 and ABC 7, like I said, we have connections with Miles. We have people willing to blow the whistle or talk in front of the camera. They just straightforwardly said, no, we don't need your information. But they're waiting for their own correspondent to report on the case, which is so weird. But still, like we know his lawyer is allowed to go inside the apartment. Now it's belongs to Look. Look is trying to sell it. But they're allowed to go in and investigate and collect more evidence. If they found more evidence, they can still continue to appeal, submit another bail request, appeal.
Just imagine, just try to sit yourself in this situation for a quick bit. Imagine having your home that you reside in and you spend all your days in, where all of your personal belongings and all of your personal stuff is. And then you get raided by the FBI. 6 hours later, your apartment goes on fire. And then, what are we in? 2 months later, April, May, June, 3 months later, you don't know why there was a fire in your own apartment, and nobody wants to answer the question, and your attorneys, and even through law, your attorneys can't go see. Yeah, like imagine having to wait for the government that you believe is infiltrated by the CCP. Imagine having to wait 3 months for them to do all of their dirt. Not all of them, but for whoever does dirt to do their dirt in these situations. The fact that he was raided was dirt in the first place. But imagine having this also being submitted into the documents and into the conversations about how there is documentation of how the CCP is trying to attack Miles and you know, just trash his name and all these campaigns against him. They know that this is the case, that a foreign government is trying to extradite him, have him assassinated, harass him. They know that this is a fact. This is documented on cases that have nothing to do with this one. And imagine that you're that person, that you're Miles, having to wait 3 months for the government that is infiltrated to do their dirt and tell you you can't find out, and we're not going to speak anything about how your apartment went on fire. Just imagine that.
That's a perfect example of government gangsters, right?
Right, government gangsters. The song you saw in the beginning.
For the very first, remember, for the very first time in 3 months, not just Miles' attorney allowed to be inside his apartment to investigate, actually also, for the very first time in 3 months, Miles and Yvette were allowed to use their laptop, air-gapped laptop with no internet connection, to prepare for their own case in 3 months. Like, I think it's just last week or 3 days ago. The judge approved him and Yvette to use a laptop with no internet, with like all the software like installed for surveillance or whatever by the government, to use a laptop for their own preparation of their own case. Almost 100 days. After almost 100 days, they can like start to use a laptop to prepare. So you're still talking to me that this is not a punishment?
Right. It's just as Americans, as a free person, try to consider this being just. Try to consider this for your own life and for anyone in the United States of America, of all places, for this to happen to someone where they don't even get a chance to, you know, respond or to defend or to begin the process of, you know, making a defense for themselves, and without actually yet having, as the judge said, this is not a discussion about whether or not the fraud has happened or didn't. There's not a discussion of that, because that's what this case is all about. We're figuring it out. And if they haven't figured it out yet, and Miles is in jail, this is absolutely guilty until proven innocent. It's not innocent until proven guilty. This is absolutely 100% guilty until proven innocent. And how is that possible? How is this even a conversation that we're having in our government? So people need to wake up to this. This entire scenario and how this is all put together, and the silly arguments that are being had, just all of this stuff is just constantly, in every show that we bring you, all of it just stinks. It doesn't smell good. All of it is just absurd. It's just it sets new precedents. It's from places we've never seen before. It's just, all of it is.
Yes, this is unprecedented. And also remember, if it can happen to Miles, it can happen to everyone.
Right.
It can happen to anyone. Anyone they want to target, anyone CCP is going after, this will happen to them. And it will happen to you. It will happen to us. Right. So that's why we fight for Miles. And remember, when you said a really good point about this, like how Miles is punished before even proved guilty, right? And after we show you the documents, after we show you all these recordings and those void conversations, those void arguments from the government, and also the circular reasoning that they give, right? They say, oh, like the reason why we deny the bail is because he committed the fraud case, but the fraud case itself is like still needs to be proved. This is the whole point of the case, right? And now also, the punishment, even a computer, not his own computer, but the computer, that to prepare for his own case. And we know the quota for meal each day is only 60 cents for him, right? He, like before that, he ate like really well. Like I know like his wife will cook him for him, and he exercise, but now like he only eat like something worth 60 cents per day. Like you can imagine that in what kind of condition it is, like in the MDC prison, right? And also he's with some real dangerous criminals, already pled or found guilty, like already like serving their terms, like in the MDC prison, right? So you're still talking to me that this is not a punishment, right? And also like he's writing letters on the floor, on the cold floor of MDC, like writing letters to his supporters and pressing his ear onto the floor, onto the freezing cold floor to listen, to hear, like when, like one day we were at the cruise and chanting 3 Mile Square for 1.5 hours. He's pressing his ear, his face to the floor. Wow. To try to listen, to try to hear that from like very remote place, because we were on a cruise. And there he can see the Statue of Liberty. And he promised to bring that into China to end the CCP. That's his goal, and that's his calling for the past like 30 years after 1989, after his brother died in the Tiananmen massacre, trying to protect his wife and his children. And his younger brother died, get shot by 2 CCP police officers. And from that day, he decided to his calling, his duty, and his goal, his meaning of life is to take down the Chinese Communist Party. And he's now suffering for all the Chinese people and for all of our supporters. And also for all the American people, because now America is becoming like a CCP controlled state. And the reason why we're showing you all of the documents, and all of the recordings, all of the receipts, is to let you know that we need to do something. We need to support this guy. And we need to stop the CCP's infiltration of the justice system and also the government.
Today I made a post on the government gangsters. I retweeted the video, and the comment I put on there was, by saving the Chinese people from the grips of the CCP, by default we save America, and vice versa. By saving America from the grips of the CCP, the American people from the grips of the CCP, by default we save the Chinese people. It's a win-win situation for us to look into this case like Miles, which is one of the most important cases that we can look at as Americans, and see, find justice in this. Everyone needs to rise up and find justice in this. You know, Miles started the NFSC with the Statue of Liberty behind him. Him and Steve Bannon on a boat with the Statue of Liberty behind them, and they declared, you know, the founding of the new federal state of China. Right now, Miles, by the grace of God, was given a view of the Statue of Liberty as a hope from the distance that liberty will come back to him, and I pray that it does.
And we firmly believe that.
Yeah,
we will win at the end. Right. Although I still remember like when Miles talked to us personally. We're doing something like considered the most dangerous and the hardest thing in the world is to take down the Chinese Communist Party.
Right.
And if you look at all those elites, all those people in Wall Street, from Hollywood, all those people from the World Economic Forum, like those evil people, like either they work for CCP or they wouldn't dare to speak up against or fight against the Chinese Communist Party.
Right.
Or the communism like looming all over the world. Now like the whole world has become a communism-controlled states, right? The big government, you know, the mandates, the vaccine mandates, the mask mandates, the COVID control, you know, the economy is collapsing, and CCP China is winning. And remember, like also like CCP control China, 500,000 people like living in poverty, right? This is the official number, like half of the population that live under like $200 a year. That's how they live. It's not the propaganda you see on the TV that the Shanghai, the Hong Kong, the big city, the skyscraper, like all the big buildings, the infrastructure is so good, and the high rises, the big plane, the whatever you see like on the screen is not actually the reality of Chinese people. The reality of Chinese people is that they're living in poverty. They never got a chance to vote for their own government for the past 70 years, and most of them, they are the supporters of New Federal State of China, and the goal of NFSE, that is to take down the Chinese Communist Party, to get one person, one vote, and rule of law. So what we live right now, what we lived for the past many years, 200 years in the United States, that's someone's hope, that's someone's dream, to live in a society like this, and we are losing this right now. Right. And now, like until now, we know that this is so precious to us. We cannot afford to lose it.
Yeah, right now we've been the beacon of hope for 250 years, the beacon of hope of those ideas and that way of life where, one person can vote and decide how they're going to be governed, and we can make this decision logically and with many people. But that hope is what the Chinese people have, but because their government, the CCP, has taken it away from them. But not only this, that us being the beacon of hope is fading away because particularly of the CCP. The CCP is slowly receding our stance as a free country and infiltrating our government. In fact, I was at yesterday. I was at a Trump's speech at his golf course in Bedminster, New Jersey, where he came and spoke after being arrested in Miami for the files at Mar-a-Lago. Yep. And he was speaking of the weaponization of the Justice Department, and right there I shouted, yes, they're weaponized and infiltrated by the CCP. And I think he heard, because everyone heard. He was pretty close. He was right there. And so this really needs to get that far. The highest people up, the people who are running, need to speak about this, need to be loud about this, because even Trump is being stopped, or all these people, if they're not chosen by the CCP, they're being attacked by the CCP to even become presidents, because the CCP wants us first above all nations. They want to take us down before we take them down. So remember, CCP, not China.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point. And also remember, like I said, there are still a couple ways to continue to appeal for the bail. And also one of the I think good channel is that like we need to urge Congress to investigate Miles' case and see like how infiltrated, how it is planned by a foreign government, which is CCP. And I think, like I heard lots of people asking that, oh, what I can do, how I can help. And also I received some emails, and I saw here and there. And also when we're at event, like people always ask, like, how do we help? How can I help? I think one thing you can help is to call your representative in your district, right? Visit them, tell them, share Miles' stories, right? And urge them to start the investigation of Miles' case. That's, I think, is very everyone's action is a valuable, weapon against CCP's infiltration.
Imagine that stance, by the way, from Miles and the New Federal State of China. Their stance has been for years now, members of Congress, lawmakers, please just look at the documentation. Just look into it, please. Just look into what's going on. Please just look into Miles' case and what's going on with him. Just look into it yourself. You decide what you get from that, but look into it. That's all we want you to do. We're not feeding you the ideas of what we want you to do for us. We want you just to look into it so that you can decide for yourself. Whoever is good from you in Congress, whoever is good out of you, make the right decision, and you decide for yourself. We have all the documents. Here it is. Check it out for yourself. Imagine that stance, rather than Miles is on sometimes on a live stream 24 hours straight, and he's just live streaming back to back for years, just saying it all and not holding back, not hiding, and just saying, look into this. Here's the documents. Like, check for yourself. So all we're asking, supporters to do is just call your Congress members and tell them, look, just check out Miles. Just look into it. You're looking into the weaponization of the Justice Department and all that stuff. Look into Miles. Miles has all kinds of connections that are you can get so many of the money trails from who's attacking him and who might be the problem within the government. Just look for yourself, and you'll find a lot of who the CCP is handling.
Yep. And other things you can do, still like support DVS, support his music, and also the Free Mile School Again music, like share and support the Free Mile School Movement album, and also you can share our social media, NFSC Speak, NFSC TV on Getter, NFSC Speak on Twitter, and also our different shows from Nico, from Ava, from DVS and myself, Infiltration Files. We'll do 2 shows, 2 episodes per week. On Wednesday we'll do it on Getter, and on Saturday we're gonna do on Getter and LFA. We're so grateful for the opportunity that the LFA, Jeremy from LFA, he really support us and give us the time. Well, we're gonna do 2-hour with Ava and DVS. We're gonna do 2-hour show. Probably we're gonna do it separately later. Both Herschel Whistleblowers and Infiltration Files on Saturday. So with that being said, that's the end of this episode. Thank you, DVS, and thank you all the audience and supporters of Whistleblower Movement. We will see you next time.
See, that's to the grave. From the land of the free, where free speech don't exist. Blue collar crimes used to get a slap on the wrist. Free Miles, G's innocent as it gets. If the crime don't fit, then you must acquit. Like that building in Manhattan, but it's alright. Cause we fighting, yeah, we fighting for his freedom. We've been standing all together till we see him free. Cause the man is innocent. Patriots come together, we gon' win.